A security camera in Ukraine picks up footage of a man walking up to an ATM with a phone in his hand. After hitting a single button, this happens. The machine spits out $10,000 worth of hryvnia, which he quickly picks up and puts in his plastic bag. This would mark the beginning of the biggest bank heist in history, where a group of hackers calling themselves Carbanak would steal over $1.2 billion from the richest men on Earth. But to fully understand this story, we need to start with how these hackers got access to the banks. A Deutsche Bank customer service employee receives an email from an upset customer. Apparently, there's been some withdrawals from his account that he didn't make, and attached is a copy of his bank history. Upon downloading the attachment, the employee is left with an encrypted document. Decrypting this document turns out to be a major mistake, because inside, the hacker group Carbanak has hidden a virus allowing them to access the computer whenever they want to. Through this simple method, Carbanak now had access to their first bank computer. Using the now infected customer service PC, the hackers were able to take full control of the bank's lower-level computers. But this was only step one in their plan. For several days, the hackers spammed background applications on the bank's computers, heavily slowing them down. This was in the hopes that an employee would contact the IT department to get their computer fixed, and somehow it worked. In order to fix the computer's issues, IT support entered an admin password into the PC, but little did they know their every move was monitored closely by the hackers, who now had exactly what they needed. With admin control, the hackers now had access to all of the bank's internal systems, and the following months they would use security footage and their access to the bank computers to track the bank's protocols. They didn't want to do anything that could risk altering the security, so they kept a low profile. During the observing phase, the hackers took control of over 200 of the bank's cameras and watched their every move. Now that Carbanak knew exactly how the bank was ran, it was time to begin their attacks. Attacks with an approach so obscure that nobody saw it coming.
This shows what federal agents are calling this jackpot operation. They say the money's cleared out quickly. In about 20 seconds, they get about 40 bills.
They have to have physical access to the machine too, so it's not like you can remotely hack into an ATM machine.
Carbanak remotely hacked 41 ATMs in just a single weekend, raking home $2.5 million in pure cash and leaving no tracks behind them. But this little taste of success made Carbanak hungry. They wanted to go much, much bigger. Carbanak knew that if they wanted to take as much money as possible, they were going to need a much larger team. But that's a lot easier said than done. Criminal hackers don't exactly stroll around looking for jobs to hop on. Or maybe they do. The hacker group's next move was genius. To find their employees, they created a fake security company called Bastion Secure. Here, they created an application page asking for various standard security jobs. And of course, they made sure to look as professional as possible, showing off awards and great employee benefits. Commanded by an unknown source and working from home, these programmers would never fully understand the grand scheme of things. Without the full picture of the gigantic organization being built, very few employees suspected anything. With time, Carbanak was able to garner over 60 new employees to unknowingly work on their heists. Carbanak had now built a team capable of anything, and they were tired of making millions, because they were ready to make billions. Their next plan was to move on to bigger things than ATMs. By slowly working their way up the corporate ladder, sending infected emails to higher and higher-ups from the company's computers, they eventually managed to strike gold with an executive. And not just any executive, but one with an ability any person should be careful with: the ability to authorize payments. With access to the entire banking system, and now also the ability to send checks wherever they wanted, the hackers began impersonating high-ups in the bank and manually sending huge sums of cash to accounts located all over the world. Through their complete control of the bank's security system, they could easily sweep their tracks behind them. The hackers began taking accounts with small amounts of money, like Jimmy here, and inflating them. After reaching a suitable amount, they would send the difference back to their personal accounts. The hackers would conduct these attacks in sprees, all over the world, taking an average of $12 million per attack, and leaving some extras for people like Jimmy to enjoy. Over the following 2 years, Carbanak would go through with hundreds of attacks on banks, ranging all across Europe and Asia, giving them a total of $700 million straight from the pockets of the richest men on Earth. They had a real-life infinite money glitch. By simply pulling up their cheating console and typing in any amount of money they wanted, it'd be transferred into their accounts by end of day. The ever-so-greedy banks were being robbed every single day and they had no idea it was happening. The thing about infinite money glitches is that they all eventually get patched. The only question is when and how.
Юджин, ты здесь?
Да.
Слушай, мне нужно, чтобы ты прямо сейчас приехал. 17.
Сейчас 2 часа ночи. Зачем я вам нужен?
Я не могу вам сказать по телефону. Я думаю, что он прослушивается.
The man on the phone was the head of IT in Russia's largest bank, talking to the CEO of the bank's recently hired security team, Kaspersky. At the bank, the head of IT noticed that the bank's domain controller had been actively sending out data. But after checking the history logs, he realized that nothing was being reported. Knowing that something must be going on, the man stayed overtime to observe the domain controller's event logs. A domain controller acts as a gatekeeper to all of the IT resources in the domain, including every single piece of technology in the entire bank. And this is what the hackers had full access to. Around 3 a.m., the technician's worst nightmare was brought to life. The live event logs show that encrypted data was being sent to servers in China. Panic erupted. After discovering the domain controller had been breached, the IT employee hastily called the head of Kaspersky. Rightfully fearing his every move was being tracked, he came to an agreement to meet in person the very same morning. After Kaspersky started going through the bank's technology, they quickly realized that all of the bank's computers, phones, and cameras were infected with something. Unsure of what exactly, they continued their investigation to try and isolate the threat. While a Kaspersky employee was on one of the bank's computers, he noticed applications opening and closing in the background. The strange part was that the employee had never touched any of the applications being run. He therefore drew the conclusion that somehow the supposed hackers had an active access to the computers. But why would they? He came to the conclusion that the hackers might be monitoring their movements. Deciding to take a shot in the dark, he opened up a Word document and typed the Russian word for hello. And nothing happened. I mean, it's a ridiculous idea. Why would the hackers ever respond to something like that? They responded. Cocky as the hackers were, they had actually responded. They were so sure that they were untraceable that they left Kaspersky's investigation with the biggest clue they could dream of. Kaspersky now knew exactly what they were dealing with. Shortly after the event, they called a crash meeting with Deutsche Bank, Citigroup, and other major European banks. The investigation had now begun. Police worldwide were on alert, but Carbanak had covered the tracks excessively. There was no way police could track him down. All they needed to do was to continue to lay low and avoid arousing any suspicion. It was July 10th, 2016, Taipei, Taiwan. 2 Carbanak money mules named Sergei Bersovsky and Vladimir Berkman made their now weekly trips to the ATM. As usual, money magically came out of the ATM and the 2 mules began filling their bags with cash. But they soon realized a Taiwanese man standing around the corner was watching them. Wanting to avoid any further suspicion, they hastily grabbed their money and ran. But the ATM kept printing. The man would walk up to the ATM and find 60,000 Taiwanese dollars laying there. Unlike most citizens who would grab the money and run, he decided to call the police. With a single phone call, the man had initiated the downfall of the biggest hacking operation in history. Unknowingly, these men walked home with their millions of dollars and happily went to sleep. But when they woke up the next morning, one of the most haunting things a criminal can witness became a reality.
On July 10th, the first bank reported that over 70 million NT dollars was withdrawn illegally, and they are certain that the ATMs were hacked with malware so that the suspects could withdraw money without inserting a card.
According to police, there are 2 Russian suspects. They arrived in Taiwan on July 8th, rented a car and started to withdraw money illegally from South
The
Korea.
hackers saw themselves on national television. They knew their game was up. In the following weeks, Taiwanese police managed to allocate 22 Carbanak hackers, 19 of which had already fled Taiwan after hearing about their crimes on television. However, 3 had stayed: Sergei Bersovsky, Vladimir Berkman, and another man named Andreas Pergodovs, the man speculated to be the head of Carbanak's hacking operations. But how the hell were the police able to trace down the hackers if they were so well hidden? Well, to figure that out, we need to backtrack. When Sergei Bersovsky and Vladimir Berkman ran away from the citizen during the ATM heist, one man made a crucial mistake. While stuffing his last bit of money into a duffel bag before running off, Sergei's ID fell out of his pocket. And when police arrived, they discovered the ID with Bersovsky's name on it. This allowed the police to trace down where Bersovsky and Berkman were staying: a Grand Hyatt a few miles from the incident. But when police went to their hotels, they noticed the men had already fled to Moscow with a private jet. The hunt to find the hackers behind Carbanak had begun. The now widespread case had every citizen in Taiwan on high alert. Over 500 Taiwanese police officers were watching CCTV footage all over the city, looking for any clues that may lead to more information. And after days of no success, they finally hit the jackpot. On July 11th, 2016, a CCTV camera recorded Vladimir Berkman traveling through the Taipei train station. Quickly, the police shifted all their focus onto the Carbanak hacker and tracked him for the following hours. After making sure he wasn't being followed, Berkman walked to the luggage lockers of the train station. Here, Berkman hid 2 full suitcases of cash in the lockers and quickly fled the scene. This was the last time Berkman was ever seen. As police continued to observe the lockers, they watched 2 unidentified men walk up to them and take the 2 suitcases. Continuing their tracking, police soon discovered the hotel where the 2 unidentified men were staying. And the next morning, they were raided and captured. Police then located 2 duffel bags stuffed with money worth $1.5 million. Finally, the police had something to go by. The unstoppable team had been stopped. Police had captured the first 2 criminals linked to Carbanak. However, this would be nothing compared to what was to come. The same day, in a different part of Taiwan, a police officer named Song Chung Liang was on vacation with his family. While sitting at a restaurant right across the Dungao police station, a man sitting a few tables away caught Sung's attention. He looked like someone he'd seen on television or maybe the news. Slightly annoyed at the situation, Sung quickly pulled out his phone and started scrolling through the news. And there he was, Andreas Pergodovs, the man speculated to be the leader of the Carbanak organization. Sung quickly pulled out his phone and called the police. Once again, a phone call had changed the trajectory of Carbanak's story. Upon his capture, Pergodovs revealed he had hidden 2 duffel bags full of cash in the mountain of Dohu Park, leading police to find another 22.5 million NT dollars. Their investigation was complete, and the powerhouse these hackers created had finally come crumbling down. With no leader and the higher-ups of the organization captured, Carbanak's game was up. Or so the police thought, until they discovered a man in Pergodov's phone going by the name of Dennis Katana. That's right, Pergodovs was only a pawn in a much larger game. Above him, holding the strings of the gigantic organization, sat Dennis Katana. Dennis Katana was much different than any of the Carbanak men police had investigated. Consistently changing his identity, moving locations every other month, and using every piece of internet protection known to man, to any police officer, he was just another immigrant building a new life in the West. But in reality, Katana had always been the mastermind behind Carbanak. Between the arrests of multiple Carbanak members in 2016 to the mid-2018s, nothing changed for the team. Katana continued to stay off the grid while successfully completing multiple bank heists in Spain. The difference this time was that the police were now on the hunt for the real Carbanak leader, and they had more information than anyone could have guessed. Interpol, short for the International Police Organization, linked the 2013 ATM crimes in Taiwan to the current ATM crimes going on in Spain. They stated that the crimes had to have been done by the same organization, since their methods were done in an oddly similar way. Katana, without his knowledge, had become the most wanted man in the world. wanted by every bank, every government, and especially every high-ranking bank billionaire. After all, the money was coming out of their pockets. In March of 2018, police had collected enough information about Katana and his heists to make their move. They had his name, location, and a list of crimes long enough to put him behind bars for centuries. In hopes of securing even more information for their case, they decided to run a full-fledged raid on Katana's house, and they caught him off guard. In his mansion, they found one Mercedes and one BMW, millions in jewelry, and most importantly, his laptop. A laptop containing 15,000 Bitcoin. This was, at the time, $164 million worth of Bitcoin, casually sitting on his computer. Katana was quickly arrested and would later reveal the truth about his identity and Carbanak for a lighter sentence. The confession of Katana, whose actual name was revealed to be Denis Tokarenko, led to the capture of 3 more Carbanak members. This was the killing blow for Carbanak. Several of their most important members were arrested, their genius leader Dennis had been captured, and all the infected computers had been located and cleaned out. It was finally game over. After stealing a total of $1.2 billion from the richest people on Earth, the hackers would go down as one of the most impactful cyber criminal groups in all of history. But their run was over. Their leader was captured, organization was crumbling, and they had lost all footing in the bank's security systems. The story of Carbanak came to an end.